Hello, I'm Andrea Gonzalez with Trellis Strategies. Thank you for joining our discussion today. You have tuned in to our fourth episode in our fifth Trellis Strategies 360 discussion series. We're grateful to have the expertise and wisdom of our panelists today, Dr. Dione D. Somerville, President of Owens Community College. In this series, we are discussing leadership for the modern learner, and we're doing this by having one-on-one conversations with presidents and chancellors of post-secondary institutions. Our discussion will be led by our president and CEO, Dr. Debra Chromy. Participant videos are off, but we encourage you to share questions or comments in the chat or Q&A, and we will respond to those at the end of our discussion. We will also be sending a recording of this discussion today to everyone who has registered once it's all edited and ready to share. Okay, I see more of our attendees have joined us, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Chromy.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. I really appreciate all your work behind the scenes to make this a reality. And also very pleased to have Dr. Somerville with us. Dr. Somerville and I have a history. We've known each other for longer than I think either of us would like to admit, but maybe not. I'm going to start calling you Dione because it feels strange to call you Dr. Somerville.
Understood. I feel the same way.
Great. So for those of you who don't know Dr. Somerville, she is a visionary higher education leader, has dedicated her career to meeting students where they are, offering them personalized learning experiences. She has a strong sense of belonging and comprehensive support for those students. Currently serving as the 8th president of Owens Community College in Northwest Ohio, Dr. Somerville has made an indelible impact since taking the helm in 2021. Her leadership has propelled Owens Community College towards its goal of becoming a vital economic driver in the region. By connecting people in industry through targeted education and training, Dr. Somerville has championed initiatives such as the creation of the college's strategic plan, the rollout of the strategic enrollment management plan, and the founding of the Center to Advance Manufacturing, a groundbreaking collaboration between Owens, Bowling Green State University, and the University of Findlay. Findlay, which we're going to talk more about this initiative in a little bit. With the Board of Trustees and support of the Owens team, her collaborative leadership achieved the vision, financing, and completion of the $31.3 million healthcare education center, an 86,500 square foot space housing the School of Nursing and Health Professions. Very cool. In such a short period of time, Dione, amazing. The Interprofessional Education and Simulation Center is the facility's highlight, a dedicated area for students in multiple healthcare disciplines to collaborate and become a highly effective team toward improving patient outcomes. And boy, that's needed more than ever right now. So before we jump into our conversation with Dione, I am going to do a little bit of setting some context around this. So as everyone knows, this speaker series has been about innovative leadership for the modern learner. And in these discussions with leaders, we are really focusing on addressing the needs of what we at Trellis have termed modern learners. And for those of you who aren't familiar, I'm going to give you a little context associated with this. At Trellis Strategies, we base our work around helping entities understand and adapt to the modern learner. And I know Dione will talk more about that as well. So to set the context and further identify who we see as the modern learner, I want to share a couple of findings from our 2025 Student Financial Wellness Survey results. And I think Andrea will drop a link to the report in the chat for those. But let me just share this with you to give you a sense of who we're talking about. From our survey, we found that about 2/3 of respondents reported working for pay while enrolled. 2/3 are working for pay while enrolled. This was the same whether you're looking at 2-year or 4-year institutions. When asked what they wanted the world to know about being a college student today, one learner responded, with college so expensive and the price to live being so expensive, a lot of college students have to work more than 2 jobs to scrape by. That's a modern learner. Of those, or almost all of those who self-identified as workers first, so workers first, which means they worked at least 20 hours per week, almost 60% of them work 40 hours per week. So think about that. And think about who people normally think about as an average college student. We are not describing what the kid with the backpack, right? And the college t-shirt. This is very different. Those who prioritize their identity as a worker first, and if I compare those to those who identify themselves as a student first, they were more likely to provide financial support to their family, such as a child, about 31% of them versus 9% who say they're students first, or a spouse, 23% versus 7%, and more likely to say that it is important they support their family financially while enrolled in college. 61% said that. As opposed to 37% who see themselves as students first. And despite the financial worries and barriers experienced by many of the students who responded, most of them in this survey feel college is worth the investment. There were more students who said they would be likely to recommend their school to a potential student than those who said they would not. So there's something we don't hear about all the time. And this is from a group of students who are struggling, working multiple jobs, etc. As one student confirmed, it's hard, but worth it. Everything you do during college career has a lasting impact on your future. And it's a path to a better life, not just for you, but for everyone around you. So as we think about that comment, helping students manage priorities and providing supports for those in need can help ensure a brighter future for even more potential and current students. And this final quote really actualizes Trellis's mission, which is to develop and advance initiatives that grow individual economic mobility and expand community prosperity. Because I've always believed that if you raise up an individual, you're raising up a family. And if you raise up a family, you're raising up a community. So I did want to make one additional note before we jump in. I wanted to make sure everyone was clear. Owens College has participated in our student financial aid survey numerous times. And we also have done some additional research for Owens as well. So we know Owens well, they know us well. And with that, I'm going to jump into a set of questions. And Dione, I'm going to start first with some more leadership philosophy, vision questions. Then we'll get into some conversations about supporting the modern learner, and then talk a little bit about innovation and workforce alignment. So hopefully we'll hit on everything in this hour. It's going to be quick. Okay, so let's start with creating a culture of innovation. So as you know, higher education is evolving rapidly. How do you foster a culture of innovation within your leadership team to ensure students receive relevant and flexible learning opportunities, again, given who we've identified as the modern learner?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here and share a little bit about the work that Owens is doing. I don't think we're not unlike a lot of other community colleges, and where we have to be very effective stewards of the resources that we have. And so for us, it really comes down to being grounded in data. Because it's so important to have information, decision grade information, to be able to figure out, okay, we have all of these needs, all in an entire region. And in Ohio, we have service districts. And so we serve, it's Northwest Ohio, suburban Toledo, but it's a 3-county area and parts of 2 additional counties. And so when you look at that kind of geographical footprint, you have to think, what is it that our region needs? What is it that our students and prospective students needs? And how do we prioritize that? One of the areas for us where Trellis was very instrumental in terms of data and data gathering was we're actually the only community college in the state of Ohio that is located outside of its urban core. And so we are we're separated by a river across from Toledo. And so we don't have a physical presence there. We've had some short-term ones in the past, but nothing long-lasting that really can transform a community and to help people really have the kind of benefits from higher education that we're founded to do. And so we actually engaged in a feasibility study to really have a really detailed understanding of what is it that is needed, if anything, what are the career fields, and for the people who have not found their way to Owens Community College yet, what are they interested in, and what does the state economic development see as the emerging needs of the future? And it's that kind of data that we're then able to partner with our statewide economic development organization that actually gifted us some of their data that helped buttress that. The city of Toledo, which helped support the study financially, the school district, University of Toledo, all of these partners were then able to come around and figure out, okay, this is something we need to do. And so we were able to sign a memorandum of understanding with Toledo Public Schools, with the University of Toledo, to work together on a specific location that our data showed had a lot of people who were college ready or had some college but not a credential, and be able to stand up these opportunities. And so for us, it really comes down to how is it that we're able to get the information we need. And that's how we help build that culture, because throughout the entire process of gathering the data, you're engaging stakeholders. Even prior to us starting the study, we had people involved. When the study was complete, we shared that information broadly. They were invited to the signing, and we continue to talk about that because part of what we need is the funding to make sure that we're able to do this in a way that does not cannibalize any of our operations in suburban Toledo or down in Findlay, where our two campuses are. And so it really is about that data gathering, that information and support, and by having everyone involved so that everyone has a shared sense of ownership in how we move forward. And so that data gathering and listening was hugely important for us.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to ask, those conversations that you had, were the other institutions and school districts and economic, were they all on board with, yes, we need to figure a regional plan as opposed to this institution does this and this institution does that, et cetera? Or did you have some challenges there?
It was mixed. And so it was interesting though, because where it was mixed wasn't where you would necessarily expect it. And so when we first started having conversations of, hey, we think we're going to need to get some more data, what do you think? One of the things that's such a benefit here is that so many people throughout Northwest Ohio already understand how important Owens Community College is to the region. They understand and they embrace, you know what, if we're going to be successful, we need a community college education partner that's going to help do all of these things in addition to what we have with the University of Toledo and, to the south of Bowling Green or our private institutions, all of those. And so that has been a big part of it, and the engagement of our public officials, because the people who weren't on board right away, a lot of times that's where their conversation would go. And so then public officials would be able to say, hey, how does this impact this? Or how does this impact that? And we're able to have those conversations about how we move forward. In order to do the renovations in the Scott Park where we're having this, the Toledo public school system actually needed to raise funds to complete some of the renovations. Some of the fundraising had already been done, but they needed to do more. And part of it was a levy. And in this day and age, when people are so property tax averse, that levy passed. So that they were able, between elected officials and having congressionally directed spending, tax levies, things of that nature, that really speaks to the kind of support that there is from a grassroots perspective for having that kind of pipeline that goes not only from K through 12 to community college to bachelor's degrees and beyond, but also for adult learners of understanding that in this day and age, growth that we will experience either is redistributing existing enrollment, or we're really going to be pulling people in who, for whatever reason, were unable to engage in higher education previously.
Yeah, and so you've hit on a couple of things that are really important to me. One is adult education, and specifically that population with some college and no credential. And we've seen student enrollment patterns changing across the country. And we saw some of this in our work with Owens. How do you think about your institutional footprint differently as the regional demographics change?
Part of what I say all the time is every human being in our service district is a prospective student of Owens Community College.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not dependent on any one pipeline. Is it true that there are differences in their needs? Absolutely. Are there differences in how we recruit them? Absolutely. And, the convenient thing about K through 12 is at some point they're all in high school. And so you have kind of a captive audience. Whereas when you're talking about adult learners, you're talking about people who are everywhere. And so that changes how we focus in terms of their needs. And so part of where that listening, that data, that information is so important is, okay, what are they telling us? Either by, information that we're able to get from, directly or anecdotally, or what are some searches that we see on our website at certain times of day? What programs are being looked at more? What are our partners in business and industry saying in terms of where they're seeing needs or where they expect to be growing? And so it's a different way of doing things, and that's made a difference in how we do outreach. And so are there, as I look at like some of our presence in the community, either billboards or web ads, things of that nature, there's definitely a transfer focus that we follow. There's definitely a lot of our applied programs, things of that nature. But then there's also things like, here are our online programs. Here's hybrid and how it can work for you. Here's, flexibly scheduled, things like that really make a difference. That the ad may not say, here, this is for you, returning adult learner, but it's speaking to the things that are important to them and where their values are and how they're able to make education work as one part of the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and so you've hit on this issue of sort of balancing traditional higher ed with sort of the change or what's needed to support a modern learner. So, community colleges often serve, just as you are, diverse learners with varying needs, and thinking about how you balance that traditional academic structure with the flexibility that modern learners require. And so if you can talk a little bit about, under your leadership, how have you identified and responded to those needs of modern learners trying to balance college with financial responsibility? So the old days of a student coming in and saying, my dog ate my paper, and the professor would say, you're out. If they come in and said, my child was up sick all last night with, something, I'm assuming this is a change in how faculty looks at the student body, et cetera. And so can you talk about what you've done or how under your leadership, you and your team have really thought about this population differently and how you support them through that process of coming back to school and persisting?
Well, one of the privileges of being at Owens is that we have a faculty and staff that have always thought that way for years.
Oh, nice.
And it's been as I think of some of our strengths, like we talk a lot about our food pantry. We have the first food pantry of any community college in the state of Ohio. And it was created because students had a service learning project that was providing food to under-resourced populations. And some of the students, as they were, in the middle of this project, asked their faculty if they could have some of the food. And so as a faculty person, if this is not your background, your training, it's kind of what do you do with this? Yeah. And so as they began to engage more people at the institution, that's when it was decided, okay, we need to do something about this and create something like this. And our foundation, so the Owens Community College Foundation, actually provided the seed money for us to begin food pantry. The person, who was involved in this service learning is the person who started this. And it's grown to where it really is largely self-sustaining between all of the food banks in the area, all of the resources that are available. But it really comes back to listening to our students, understanding their needs, and then feeling empowered to act upon it. And so a lot of things in terms of the mindset and the culture, I think have been part of our community for a very long time. I think that where it comes into the mechanics, that's where there continues to be culture change. And so things like adopting online. And what does that mean? And how is it that you're able to get the professional development that you need to make sure that not only that students are, at their best learning online, but that you're able to teach best online. As a community college, our role is teaching and learning. And so how is it that we make sure that our faculty have the kind of professional development that they need so that they can have the best kind of pedagogical philosophy for these different modalities? We also have been early adopters of a lot of hybrid courses, and particularly with having a couple of different campuses, we're able to give students a very a very personable experience to where sometimes a faculty member might be on one campus for that class. The next day, they might be at the other campus so that the students have the benefit of having that in-person experience, but also being at a distance so that we're able to maximize enrollment to having a split section like that. And so that's been a lot of the conversation. We also have done a lot of this through our accreditation with the assessment of student learning, because that's been really important to kind of come back to, okay, what is our core? What is our core mission? And how is it that we're able to demonstrate to our students as well as others in our community what it is we're doing and how is it that we do this? And, and even though it's a tried and true methodology, for lack of a better word. One of the things that was so wonderful about our strategic plan process a few years ago is that it was completely grassroots. It was our faculty, our staff, voice of our alumni, community, everyone coming together. And when they revised that mission statement, it literally was our college community that created that. And so their words were about being a conduit to business and industry and creating those paths and being a first choice institution. It was really our college community that came together to do that. And I think that that's something that helps solidify within your institutional culture why it is who you are and what it means not only to the institution, but everyone you serve.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you instituted this policy or this strategic plan a couple of years ago. I know it's probably early days, but can you talk a little bit about maybe what has been the greatest impact on student access, persistence, and then completion at Owens as a result of some of these changes you have either reinforced or brought to play at the institution?
Mm-hmm. So we're a little more than halfway through our strategic plan. And one of the strategic pillars is around our strategic enrollment management philosophy. And so bringing in now not so new Vice President of Enrollment Management and Student Affairs, who helped modernize and add a level of data and sophistication to the existing enrollment management plan. And that really has helped move that forward. The other piece of it is the expectation of an alliance and a partnership and true collaboration with academic affairs and student affairs. Mm-hmm. Because when you look at the student experience, you look at the student enrollment cycle, you think about completion, enrollment, all of that, they really have to have their arms around our student body. There are things that our faculty will see, particularly at an institution that's 100% commuter. A lot of times our faculty are on the front lines of what students are experiencing. Sometimes it's an advisor, sometimes it's someone in student life. And so having that kind of culture and the expectation that we're going to work together and to create these is a huge part of it. I think that the first signal was that I'd asked our provost to chair that search committee. And so that really kind of sets the tone and the expectation that we're working together on all of these. Different enrollment or retention initiatives have representation from both those areas. For example, the state of Ohio requires us to have a strategic completion plan submitted every 2 years. The committee that works on that is blended from both those groups before it even goes through any sort of approval process. Advising, we've talked about how is it that we can make sure that the advising function, which is in one area, is still connected to our faculty, because they're the ones who are going to see certain changes before any grade ever occurs. And so it's making sure that all of those are working together is what's most important to us as we kind of submit and try and continue to move that culture forward.
Yeah, that's amazing, Dion. Thinking about creating that culture and getting everybody sort of thinking about it from the same perspective or same view, especially, if someone, a faculty member is usually the first person who's going to see there's a problem, whether someone's falling asleep in class, it's, is it because they haven't been able to get the rest they need, or that they're hungry, or, whatever, or not showing up, all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it comes from really simple things like, snow days.
Yeah.
One of the things that we historically had not done was to take into account what's happening with our neighboring school districts. And so knowing that from our data, about a third of our students are caregivers, either their parents or they're caring for someone. And so when you see all the major school districts around you close, that means about a third of your students aren't going to be in class.
Yeah.
And so what kind of experience do we want to create, not only for those students, like are they going to try and leave their children? Are they going to be bringing their children with them? If the roads aren't safe for them to get to school, are they safe to get to, and sometimes, we can have our campus completely clear and the roads immediately around us can be clear. But all the rest, maybe not so much. And particularly because we draw not only from an urban area, but from rural areas, there's a lot of variability. And then you put your faculty in the position of, all right, do I give grace? Do I keep class? Do I cancel class? Do I keep to the letter of the assignment? All of those are decisions that if we just close, it takes away a lot of heartache and a lot of burden for a lot of people. And so it's been something that we've tried to, kind of make sure is interwoven throughout all the decisions we make as an institution.
Yeah, and that's a great example. And it hits on my next question, was going to be related to transportation, which I know, given that you are sort of regional in nature, has been a key challenge for Owens students. And this includes getting to and from the Perrysburg campus. And how have you been able to think creatively, above and beyond this snow day example, think about this challenge?
Well, we have had a shuttle for many, many years. And our shuttle is plagued by very, very low ridership. This last year, we averaged like 8 students that rode this shuttle.
Wow.
And some of them weren't even students. And so, you have a population that will come and just hang out on campus. We've worked with, so through a grant, we've worked with the Transportation Association of America, with Trellis, and with our own regional provider, the Toledo Area Regional Transit Authority, to try and look at different options for our students. Like, is our schedule the right way? Is it,
Right.
Things of that nature? And none of that has been a really good solution for us. Because of how the public transit system is funded, they literally have the last stop is about 2 communities away. About a mile away is the last stop. And so we're in one of those suburban areas where lots of borders come together. Yeah. And so we will be changing our shuttle around to where we will pick people up from that last stop. And as we continue to work with our regional transit authority, with our elected officials, with everyone, really getting people that access to public transportation is important, not just for us, but for all of the other employers in the area.
Yeah.
But it becomes one of those complicated issues, is that the municipality has to add a tax in order to add that transit service. And so it as you can imagine, it becomes a very layered issue. But we know that we have students for whom transportation is an issue. It doesn't take, a wizard to walk through our parking lot and see the conditions of some of the cars in the lot.
Yeah.
Or there's been times where if I'm waiting at the light, not far from where that last bus stop is, one of the images that is burned in my mind from this past winter, where we had a lot of snow, and so you had some of the snowbanks piled up, where there was a gentleman who was riding his bike on the sidewalk, picked up his bike on his shoulder to walk over the snowbank, cross the street, get back on his bike to ride down the street to his employer. And so these are real stories, real experiences from real people. We're trying to work within the partners and the frameworks that are in existence for us, because we believe that there needs to be a change. And that change isn't completely up to us on if it occurs and how it occurs and the timeline in which it occurs. And so we've been very active participants. Our county, the regional transit, had I think it was called the Workforce Mobility Study or something along those lines, because they understand that it's a bigger issue, including Owens, but with a lot of employers. There's a career and technical center that's not far from us, having the exact same challenge. And so for us, it's been, how is it that we can help as much as we can through existing frameworks, and how can we supplement with things like our own shuttle and trying to figure out what's the best way to help students out.
Yeah, just a mile away, that last mile. Wow. Yeah. I'm going to switch gears now to talk a little bit about what you've done from an innovation and workforce alignment perspective. So I know that Owens has expanded flexible pathways such as workforce training, short-term credentials, partnerships that are really tied to regional industrial need. How do you decide which innovations are worth scaling, specifically when thinking about modern learners?
Mm-hmm. For us, it all begins with those conversations with employers, with our economic development partners, and aligning that with where our students have interest or where we can create interest. So one of the best examples was in partnership with our Regional Council of Governments, the City of Toledo, several municipalities, and the EPA. It started with a United States EPA grant that the Council of Governments wrote. Their research and the feedback that they got from their members demonstrated that there would be a significant number of retirements in water treatment and wastewater treatment professionals. And so a lot of the municipalities were incredibly concerned that they weren't going to have trained, licensed operators to deliver potable water. And so Owens, as the educational partner, we all came together. We already had a faculty member who had a similar program in the past. However, what this grant provided was the funding for this faculty member to work with all the municipalities and the state EPA to be able to redesign the curriculum, and it provided scholarships for the students. And so, as you can imagine, this isn't a profession that a lot of people knew about.
Yeah.
And so there was, jointly there was a marketing campaign created. There were several open houses scheduled. Several of them got canceled because the demand was so overwhelming from the first one or two to where the classes were full. And so we were able to come together as a community. And so something like that, when you have all of the right support, that is a very clear signal that this is something where there's demand. It needs to be scaled. As positions were filled, the program was paused, knowing that it's here to be brought back when those needs occur. Something similar occurred with our Bachelor of Science in Nursing. As a community college, and with how Ohio Revised Code is, it's very rare for a community college to be able to offer a bachelor's degree. However, there was such a need that was expressed throughout the state from healthcare systems that we need more bachelor's degree nurses. And we believe that our community colleges, because they already partner with us for associate degree nurses, for LPNs, for all sorts of other healthcare professionals. And so the Ohio Revised Code, the law was actually changed to allow for this, and it was a workforce need. And so we were able to go through the process. We launched we received all of our final approvals last fall. We launched the first cohort this January, and we have students who are in that pipeline. And so, to go back to one of our earlier themes about modern learners, adult learners, because it's a completion program and they already have their clinicals and everything, that last part is completely online. And so you can be working as a nurse and taking your classes at Owens full time to get your BSN. And so you're able to earn a bachelor's degree at community college tuition levels.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you've talked about a couple of examples of sort of investing in partnerships and workforce connected initiatives. Can you talk a little bit about your work specifically around advanced manufacturing and logistics and how you went about forging those relationships with regional employers and determining what academic programs could be created or evolve, similar to what those examples that you just gave? And I mention this because I think it's so important, especially at the community college level, to be thinking about and the way people look at, and certainly what we heard from our survey, is they want to get out and they want to get a job. We can argue about ROI and all of that, but when you're looking at a community college, and specifically when you're talking about modern learners, their goal is to increase their income, to get a steady job with benefits that has growth opportunities, et cetera. So when I think about that, nothing against nursing, and we certainly need the wastewater people in Texas too. So if you redo that, you can send some of those people down to Texas. But how do you go about, does it start with understanding what the workforce needs are? Does it start with conversations with employers? Is it a statewide piece? And how do you go about not only forging those relationships, but then you've got to figure out what academic programs need to be created. There's a whole accreditation process, except all of that. And how do you get things set up and running? And how do you prioritize all that? That's a big question.
But it's all of the above. It's everything you said, because what you'll find is that the information swirls. And, you might have a dean who's part of a statewide committee that might hear something. Your provost might hear something. Your workforce person might hear something. I might hear something. So there's two examples that come to mind related to that. One is the Center to Advanced Manufacturing. And that was an initiative that started well before I arrived at Owens. And it really was looking at how do we take the strengths of different kinds of institutions. So community college, Bowling Green was a four-year public, University of Findlay was a four-year private. And we all had slightly different programs. We all brought something different, but Northwest Ohio is a huge manufacturing hub. It really has to do with that proximity, along I-75. And so it's a strength for us, but not every employer had the workforce they needed, the trained workforce they needed, and the industry overall. A lot of people don't really recognize what modern manufacturing is. When you go to these plants, it's more like being a computer operator or computer technician than, as a person who grew up in Detroit, I can drive by that first Model T factory and there was nothing clean coming out of it, right? Yeah. But it's like you go to, like, one of our partners is, First Solar. That is an absolutely pristine, clean plant. You go to Dana Manufacturing. It's the same thing there. And so you have all of these industries that people don't understand. And when you have people who don't necessarily encourage their students or their children to pursue manufacturing, there's a whole part of that that's missing. And so it really is about not only the employers, but also our state agency. So our statewide economic development agency, Jobs Ohio, part of the research that they've done is really looking at, okay, these are all the industries that are growing in the state. or that are relocating to the state? Do we have the workforce necessary to be able to sustain these industries? And that's when they say, okay, community colleges in Ohio, this is what we're projecting the need is. How can you help us get there? And then that's where a lot of your academic professionals really come into play, because part of what we're doing, so we had the Center to Advance Manufacturing. That was great in terms of partnership. It was something that it has evolved because a lot of what was most part of what was most valuable out of that experience was collaborating, understanding where all of our resources are, engaging business and industry in those conversations, and engaging our elected officials. And so hosting those roundtables where they get to hear directly from business and industry regarding where their concerns are, where the opportunities are, and where everyone plays a different role in helping. And then you look at us from an academic perspective. Fields like mechanical engineering tech, electrical engineering, advanced manufacturing or mechatronics, things of that nature. Those are ones where our dean and the faculty in that area have come in and said, okay, these are what these new businesses are. This is what our curriculum looks like. This is what we need to change so that this can go on. And this is where we need investment in either updated facilities, equipment, faculty expertise, things of that nature, so that all of those work together to be able to meet those needs. And so advanced manufacturing in particular is something that is interesting because of the fact that, when you think of young people and you ask them from an aspirational perspective, high schoolers, middle schoolers, what careers are you interested in? Working at a factory generally is not one of the answers that you hear. And so those partnerships with our K-12 school districts, particularly those who have career tech programs or our career and technical programs. So like our career center that's right next door, Penta or Toledo Public Schools or Washington Local, a lot of them have really good programs. Rossford's another one. And so as you have all of those and those pipelines, and also some of our workforce and economic development organizations. So all the counties have programs like that. The state has several county offices that have programs like that. There are boards, workforce development boards, whose job is to do nothing other than to connect education to the workforce pipeline. And so our engagement in all of those, which is why when I said the answer is like it's all of those things together, it really is all of those things together. And how we then kind of bring all of that information back and prioritize, okay, of all these things, this is where our next investment needs to be, or this is the direction that we need to support as an institution.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you hit on a couple of things. I wrote like 3 or 4 notes of things I wanted to follow up with you on. And one is, so, nobody thinks about going to work in manufacturing. You have the old vision of what that is, right? Especially if your parents don't have a college education and they have a vision of what that is. Is there any work that you do or that could be done with high school teachers in helping them to understand, yes, I still remember, why do I need to know algebra? Why did I, and to help them understand that these different jobs or these different careers exist out there that maybe didn't exist back when they went to school. So that's my first question for you.
So one of the boards that we've been engaged with, that Owens has been engaged with since its inception, they specifically host high school teacher education days, where they will take the teacher to the high school or wherever, or to the manufacturer. I apologize, to be able to expose them and show them a lot of that. So that's a big part of it. Some of what we're doing with some of our partnerships, there's one in particular, the Northwest Ohio Innovation Consortium, which is very much focused around glass, because Toledo, their history was providing glass one of the big parts was that we provided all of the automotive glass to the automakers in Detroit. And so a lot of our history is around glass innovation. And so when you think of like First Solar, that spun out of the glass industry for fiberglass, all of those things. And so as they are looking at different innovations in glass and glass making, glass products, all of that, we're hosting summer camps for youth. And
Oh, wow.
so it's getting them engaged in glass from a very age and grade appropriate way, as a way of keeping them engaged. And then as they, become older or go along in school, they're able to then have more age appropriate things. And so I think that all of that is having a big impact in how people see these kinds of opportunities, and to really help change a lot of the perception around what these do. We're also able to help promote that throughout all of what it is we do. So when we have, different partnerships or, opportunities with apprenticeships or pre-apprenticeships, things like that, then we're able to share that to kind of help put that information out there for people, and to help really change some of the perception around what advanced manufacturing really is.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go next. It was around apprenticeships and thinking about those partnerships with employers that maybe kind of work both ways. One, in terms of apprenticeships, and especially if they're paid apprenticeships or paid internships, help someone to subsidize their cost of going back and getting a credential. But the flip side is that there are people who maybe went to work who only had a high school degree and now need that advanced coursework to be able to advance in their job or their position. So I'm assuming there are some sort of working both ways relationships or partnerships with employers as well that are taking place.
Absolutely. And there was even, I wish I could remember exactly which organization it was, but there was an organization that had come to the area. And as they're looking at all of the things that their prospective employees needed, they knew that their employees needed a little more with math. And so they came to us fully expecting that we would give them, here's some courses or here's some things that you can buy from us. And our academic team said, you know what, here's some modules that are going to get you exactly where you need to go, and they are free. And so, to be able to just have that kind of support for, industries overall is hugely important. The apprenticeships and all of the learn and earn opportunities, are very important to us, because a lot of employers want to have those opportunities to have people be trained the way that they want to do certain things, and have that be part of their kind of almost like extended onboarding.
Yes.
And so that's very important. And we all know that if you have those kinds of opportunities and you're successful in them, you're more likely to be able to not only get a job with that company, but you now have experience that if that company isn't where you're going to be more employed in the field. And so those learn and earn opportunities they're growing. They kind of seem like they kind of ebb and flow a little bit, but we have more employers that have engaged with Owens regarding those opportunities.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things all happening at the same time. We've seen the demographic cliff hit with the largest high school class last year graduating. We have close to 40 million individuals across the country with some college, no credential. So there are lots of opportunities there to offset. But I also think with the advent of AI and what that's going to mean to people in terms of what their jobs are going to look like in the future. Or, I mean, I always say, and I stole it from the head of NVIDIA, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who knows how to work with AI is going to take your job. So thinking about embedding AI into what we teach and what individuals learn. I mean, is that the next big thing from a sort of tackling, where higher ed is going and what you need to be able to support? Is that the next big thing, or is there something else?
That's a good question. I think that while I can't say if AI is the next big thing or not, it's definitely something that our academic team has paid attention to and is embedding into the curriculum. And so our approach has been not that it should be its standalone thing, but okay, as a healthcare professional, how are you going to use this? As a manufacturer, as a student who's taking transfer classes in business, whatever it is, how is it that you're going to be able to use this appropriately? As you talk about AI and partnerships and all sorts of things, we were approached by an entrepreneur who has a dental scribing software that he needed to beta test. And so he asked if our dental hygiene students would beta test it for him. And so here you have real time an AI tool that they're then going to have to use probably some form of in many of the dental clinics in which they will be working to be able to, be successful at their jobs. And so the company was successful enough. It got purchased by someone else who's trying to, upscale it even more. And so, having it as part of it. We also have looked at it because a lot of employers, people who are saying, you know what, I don't know what AI is going to mean, but here, can you teach my folks about it? And so in our workforce area, we partnered with a local organization who's about, using, human-centered AI is kind of their philosophy. And offered a workshop series. And so the workshop series was everything from what is AI and how does this work, all the way through to how do you then use AI to be more productive in your own job, kind of like graduating more to that more human-centered approach. And that was a workshop series that was not only successful and well enrolled, there's now spin-offs that are happening in other companies as well as another set of courses that we'll be offering.
Yeah, so I think of it, I'm going to date myself here, but when I was in school, you couldn't use a calculator. You had to show your work, right? And now, by the time I got to high school, you could use your calculator for everything. Couldn't use the internet, then you could. I feel like AI is going to be one of those things that right now everybody's really nervous about how it's going to be, but then it's going to be a tool that just improves our effectiveness and efficiency. But we need to understand when it's working well for us and when it's not working well for us. And that still requires a great deal of education and human interaction, I think.
And it really does. And I mean, and it's just like anything else where, like I think about the spell check. And it's sometimes, the spell checker doesn't understand the context in which I meant what it was I typed.
Yes.
And so, if you don't have the root knowledge to know when your, technology is leading you astray, there you are.
That's a good example. Believe it or not, we're almost out of time, but I'm going to, unless there are any burning questions, I haven't seen any pop up yet. I'm going to ask you sort of a closing question about, as you look ahead, what do you believe innovative leadership in community colleges must do differently to serve the next generation of modern learners, given the environment we have just talked about and where things are going?
I think that for me, I don't know how much is truly different. I think some of it is remembering what you do and why you do it in the first place. When you consider the role of community colleges, our access mission, the fact that there's now more and more research that shows how communities that have a community college are a more vibrant community, how there's better education and workforce outcomes, all of those things. It really is remembering why it is what you do in the first place and continuing to work throughout your organization and with partners on how you keep moving that mission forward. I think that things will always change. There will always be new technologies, the calculator, the internet, All of those things have the opportunity to be very disruptive and distracting.
Mhm.
But I think our role as educators, as leaders, however, whatever term you want to give us, is about remembering that our mission, lowercase mission, is constant. It's about providing opportunities and pathways for people to receive and engage in the transformation benefits of higher education. Whatever it is that looks like, however it is they're able to consume it, be it online, be it hybrid, be it in person, be they 55 or 15,
Yeah.
we have an opportunity to help people live to their lives' fullest potential. And that's what our role is. And it might, I never think of all the people who never imagined that they would have to lead through a pandemic. Imagine all of the people who never thought that they would see as many changes as we have in either legislation or policy or agencies that we work with.
Mhm.
And part of it is our job to figure out how is it that we're going to navigate on behalf of the communities that we serve. And if that means thinking about things differently, if that means talking to someone who you didn't have to talk to before, if that means a different kind of advocacy, if that means, okay, maybe we don't do this anymore, but let's engage with someone so to figure out how we do this instead. All of that is necessary. And I suspect that those are all the things that have been necessary for a very long time before AI was thought about, before we've done a lot of the research that we had. I think it just gives a different kind of visibility and legitimacy to the role that we've had for years.
Yeah, I can see that. When you were talking, I was thinking about, we've always talked about lifelong learning, but now more than ever, it's becoming a norm as opposed to a nice to have. But we've always talked about that as something that existed out there. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's interesting. Um, Dione, my friend, thank you so much for spending this last hour with me, sharing your knowledge and expertise, your experience, your success that you and your team have had at Owens Community College. I wish you continued success. I feel like you are one of the leaders in terms of moving things forward, and I can't wait to see what happens next at Owens. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for
much.
your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. I thank you for the invitation to be here.
You're welcome. And thank you to everyone who has joined us online. Thank you all very much. And again, thank you, Dione.